So I'm re-listening to Is There a Life After Death by Anthony Peake. And like as I'm listening to it, I'm just thinking I'm really starting to wonder like whether or not this world is really like the type of, I don't want to say prison, but maybe like a trap, right? Like, the reason why I'm saying that is this. So there's this particular chapter I'm listening to. He's talking about near-death experiences. And basically, everybody that has a near-death experience more or less reports the same thing, especially if it's unexpected, like a sudden car crash or a drop or something, from a high building or whatever it is, But everybody says that when they die, their whole life flashes before their eyes, and then some unseen entity, kind of pops up out of nowhere and then starts like asking them, like, what do they do with their life? And like, what I was thinking as I was listening to this was like, okay, first of all, who the fuck are you to like ask me what I'm doing with my life? Like let's really think about that, right? Like let's just say that all these people who have near-death experiences, and if you've had a near-death experience yourself, like really like legit think about it. Okay, so you found yourself on this planet. You had no idea what you're doing. You have no idea what the rules are. You're just trying to like survive, and all of a sudden, like as you're minding your own business, something fucked up happens and you die. And then while you are now dead or watching your life flash before your eyes, some being shows up and then starts asking you fucking questions like this, a pop quiz. What'd you do with your life? Were you a good person? Like it's time for us to judge you. Like, what kind of sense does that even make? Like, first of all, how are you going to judge me? I don't even know what the rules are. Like by the recollections, by the sound of the recollections of what I'm reading, it seems like a lot of people, obviously, when they report their near-death experiences, like they are taken by surprise, like that they're even dying. And then like here's an entity that's coming all of a sudden out the blue to like ask them questions. Like it's one thing if as you go into the world, you're told, hey, like live your best life, don't be a dick. But you show up here, if you have a memory of your past life, that shit's deleted. And then you have to basically, live your life the best you can based on like arbitrary rules and regulations that are imposed upon you by society. Yeah. And then, as luck or unluck will have it, something happens and then you die. And then somebody shows up and judges you and then decides where you're going to go, if you're going to get sent by one person's account to the left and down, which I guess is to a lower existence, or I guess to the right and up, which would be to like a higher dimension. But like, does any of that make any type of sense to you? Like any kind of sense? Is that even like, that should inflame your sense of right and wrong. I mean, that does for me. The other thing that kind of bugged me was I'm listening to the accounts, and people have said that throughout, time, whenever somebody has a near-death experience, if they're a religious person, the entities that show up and meet them and talk to them after they die tend to take on like the form of whatever like conventional idea of what Christ looks like. Right? So like maybe 500 years ago, Christ was depicted with obviously darker skin and shorter hair and clean shaven, because culturally speaking, that was the prevalent, perception and view of what, men were supposed to dress like, etc. Now, most people view Christ as, this bearded white dude with blue eyes, which then attests to the fact that people who have near-death experiences and see Christ see a different version of Christ, right? They see a Christ that's based on the societal construct of this Jesus persona. depending on what society they existed in. That's weird to me. Like, that's weird to me, right? It's almost as though some entity is essentially taking on the persona, embodying the persona of Christ in order to convince you that you need to come back here. Like I've said it before, and I'll say it again. You know, you might hear the thought that, okay, well, you're not going to die. You actually come back. And that might give you some sort of sense of solace, right? Like, mostly because we live, excuse me, hold on. All right, sorry. I had to adjust something here. Mostly because we live in a society where you basically been programmed to think that, you know, you just die the one time and that's it. And you fade away to oblivion and you're, maggot food, which is bullshit. But that's what you are presently programmed to believe, right? By quote unquote science. Although more and more prevailing academic thought is that consciousness cannot be found in the body and might actually persist after death. Duh. So there's that. So let's say, like, I'm talking to you right now, and as I'm talking to you, I just die. Okay, I don't want to use you to say, okay, as you're listening, you die, because I don't want to put that on you. But let's just say, like, as right now I'm talking to you, I die. And not die in the sense of I shift, my consciousness to a parallel reality where I survive whatever it is that killed me, but like proper death, like the end, right? Okay, so as of now, everything that I know about this world and this reality is based on reading, speculation, and personal experience. Yeah? Okay, so I have no real knowledge of what the rules of the game are. Okay, so you mean to tell me that, and I think that as far as dealing with people are concerned, or I'm sorry, not as far as dealing with people, but as far as just like an average person is concerned, most people don't read the way I read. Most people don't question reality the way I question reality. Nothing wrong with that. It's just, we are different people. This has just been my kind of, obsession, I guess, more or less, to really figure out what the true nature of this reality is. But if I were to die right now, yeah, and then some entity shows up as I'm like flying through the air, and then I'm watching my whole life, flash before my eyes, and then some white dude with a beard pops up talking about, hey, all those people you blocked, and all those people you cussed out, and, like all those bad things that you did, yeah, you're going to have to come back to Earth and make up for it. How do you think, y'all knowing me, how do you think I'm going to respond to that? The first thing I'm going to say is, first of all, fuck you. Like, you didn't tell me, what the rules are. What kind of game is this? What kind of game is this? Every game in any sense of fairness should tell you, first of all, that, you're in a game. If you don't know that you're in a game, then you're going to operate differently than if you know what the rules are to this game, right? So how are you going to judge people? How are these entities that query people and then make them like review their lives and then try to make them feel guilty afterwards and then tell them you've got to come back to make up for the wrongs that you did? You got to come back here and do it all again. Like, how is that fair? And here's the worst part. It's not even like, okay, you have to come back and fix what you did wrong. How am I supposed to fix what I did wrong? Let's just say that, okay, fine, I agree. I'll come back and I'll try not to cuss that motherfucker out. And I'll try to, quote unquote, be a better person. Okay, now, how am I supposed to fucking remember this if you wipe my memory? Like, hello, doesn't that just more or less, if you delete my memory, right, and you just leave me with sort of vague inclinations of who I was before, and then you send me back here again, I'm just going to do the same shit I did the first time. And then I'm not even going to remember that you basically tricked me into coming here before. So like, how many times can that loop happen over and over again, right? Before I become aware, become conscious. So there are tons of books out there about people talking about near-death experiences. One of them is called Life After Life. I don't want to look up the title right now to find the author, but you can find it. It's on Audible. And then when you look that up, you'll see like other books that suggest, similar titles or whatever. And there have been scientific research done, about people who died and then came back. So these are facts. But I really, 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 really want you to really sit back and really think about what the implications of that. Like, I know it's exciting, like I was there when I first read Is There Life After Death? When I first read Labyrinth of Time? When I first read Life After Life? When I first listened to great courses about death and dying, and all of that was cool because, having that sort of knowledge, learning about kids who reincarnated and, knowing all of this stuff about people, like, for sure surviving after they die, like, that's clearly, that clearly gives you a sense of optimism, right? You're looking forward to know that you don't just fade into nothingness. So at first I was like, all right, that's cool. Like, that's what's up. And then I started really thinking about like, okay, but what the fuck does that really mean though? Really, like I'm gonna say it again. Like, let's think about this together. I'll say it again. And then you think about this with me. Okay. We're sitting here chilling. And then something happens. Let's say an asteroid hits me dead in the skull right now as I'm having this conversation with you, and everything fades to black. My whole life flashes before my eyes. High school, college, painting, all of that. And then some dude shows up looking like Jesus, talking about you threw your Bible away. You need to go back and make amends for all the wrong that you did. What is your, think about that. What is going to be your first primary response? What should be your first primary response based on everything you know now? Like, first off, y'all niggas didn't tell me I was being monitored or whatever. Secondly, you wipe my brain. You wipe, not my brain, but you wipe my awareness of what I did in the past. So you're basically the one at fault here. If you want me to do things differently, then maybe you shouldn't have made me forget what I did in the past. Like, what the fuck? That reminds me, there is a Black Mirror episode that was like basically what I'm talking about. I think it was the first season. And it starts off with like, and if you haven't watched it, spoiler alert, but it starts off with this like young lady. She's like kind of being chased by people in masks, and she has like no idea what's going on. And it's just like, she's just terrified. She's just horrified. And long story short, come to find out that in the future, that's basically the justice system. They punish you over and over again for a crime that you did. So she committed a horrible crime, and you find that out later on. And so in that world, in the world of Black Mirror, their sense of justice and fair play is to punish people over and over again for what they did. And granted, what she did was fucked up. But is it fair to punish somebody for something that they don't even remember doing? Like, think about it. Like, if I put you, like, say we live in a society where if you commit a crime, you go to jail, okay? But before you go to jail, your memory gets wiped. So you don't even know, one, that you're in jail, right? So your memory of the outside world is wiped. Everything that you did, whatever you did that, caused you to end up in jail, all of that deleted, wiped from your brain. And then you have to just go and serve, let's say, a 10-year sentence or whatever. How is that? What kind of sense does that fucking make? What is the game here? What are you trying to prove? Like that if you, that deep down inside this person is just a shitty person? If they don't remember what they did, how can they make amends? Unless you're not really trying to get them to make amends, you're just trying to profit off of their labor. Like, I know this podcast, I talk about some wild things, but obviously the purpose of the podcast is to get y'all to really think and not just on surface level stuff, but like really think deeply about what is happening in this reality and what's going to happen after you leave it, and possibly what has happened several times before. I guarantee you there's not that many people that are going to be talking about the stuff that I'm talking to you about. So if you stumbled across this podcast and you're listening to this episode right now, clearly you're listening to it for a reason. You need to be working on staying conscious when you become unconscious, when you go to sleep. And you got to really think deeply about what I'm talking to you right now and keep it in the forefront of your mind. Keep in mind that just look at life and the world as you have it and really ask yourself, like, okay, how is this fair? Okay? So let's say the Hindus were right. Reincarnation is real, right? And, after you die, you have to just keep coming back here over and over again. How the fuck is that fair? How the fuck is that fair? Especially when none of us, or very few of us, have any idea about what we did previously, because your memory gets wiped when you get put back in here. So now I'm going to start wilding out with the theories, right? Who put us here? Right? You got to ask the question. You found yourself in a situation, you found yourself in this place or whatever, and you're basically surrounded by other human beings, and you don't ask the questions like, how did you get here? And yes, you have, scientists or whatever kept talking about the Big Bang, which has now evolved into the Big Bounce and all of that other stuff. That's all fun and great and everything like that. But still, you need to be asking yourself, how did I get here? What the fuck am I doing here? And the fact that very few people actually ask themselves and other people that question, and that they get uncomfortable when other people ask them that question, to me, that's a red flag. That should be a red flag to you. With all the evidence, and I'm about to shift to aliens, but with all the evidence that we have of alien sightings and things of that nature, people still, when you mention aliens, will still laugh like it's funny. Personally, like I said, I don't believe that aliens come from another planet. I am more inclined to believe that they're either a more advanced civilization of beings, or they're just like monitoring entities, right? They just like prison guards. And the only reason why I say that, and this is not meant to be a negative, podcast, like it is what it is. But if it's not said, right? If I don't put it out there, then it's not said. It's not said and it's not publicized. It's just sitting in my brain. And if this has the potential to help you break free from this, cage or whatever, then I'll risk sounding quote unquote crazy. Okay. So I'll just go ahead and lead with that and then follow up with this. There was a scene in season 1 of Westworld that made me pause. It was when the hosts, I think, were frozen, but some of the hosts were not responding to the remote control or whatever by the guests and by the park leaders or park maintenance crew or whatever. It was it was very quick. If you blink, you would have missed it. But the Native Americans, they depicted the maintenance crew kind of like we depict aliens. So to them, they thought that those people that would show up in like their hazmat suits or whatever when the game was paused and the hosts were, shut down temporarily so that the maintenance crew could like do cleanup and stuff like that. So they would wear like these like hazmat suits. And so some of the hosts, either through recollection or just not being able to get or not being shut down, did recall seeing the guests dressed in these like hazmat suits. And so they depicted them in art the way we depict aliens. And that kind of made me pause. And it just happened so quickly, and there wasn't much commentary on it, but clearly they put that there for a reason. And I think the reason is just to get you to maybe stop and think and apply, what you're seeing to your own life. I mean, that whole show is basically set up to make you pause and apply what you're seeing on the show to your whole life. Season 1 was phenomenal. I haven't watched season 3 yet, but I strongly recommend season 1. And so with that in mind, think about how we perceive aliens. I've said that they are, in my opinion, they are just more, more advanced human civilization. But another thought could be that we could be in some sort of, the word matrix comes to mind. And I only hesitate to use the word matrix because obviously when you say matrix, everybody thinks about the movie. And I'm not basing my perception of this reality construct on a movie. The movie was based on philosophy, theosophy, quantum physics, the works of Philip K. Dick, the writings of the Gnostics, which was a religious sect that were persecuted by the Christians, writings of Nietzsche, writings of Kant. So they didn't create, the Wachowski siblings didn't create the concept of this world being a false construct. So I just want to kind of start with that because I know some people who like to mock people who, question what's happening, want to say, oh my God, you really believe that the Matrix is real? And then they think, about the movie. So I kind of want to start with that. In the original script, it's been said that the Wachowski siblings had it so that the AI actually were utilizing the network of human brains, not as batteries, because clearly you have a whole sun, obviously for energy, and wind power. I mean, there's other ways. The human body is not an efficient battery. basically. But it was more, they needed a neural network. And that was the original idea behind the Matrix, was that the AI were utilizing our brains as a sort of farm, a neural network kind of farm. And they didn't think that most people would understand that, so they just dumbed it down to were batteries. Now, of course, in hindsight, I think they probably maybe wish that they would have left it as is, because it makes more sense, especially to modern day people who now use computers on a daily basis. But hindsight is 2020, so everything happens for a reason. Now think about it like that. If this is some sort of closed system where after you die, you get confronted by beings who, I'm sorry, but by all accounts, it seems as though their main purpose is to just kind of guilt you into coming back here again. Then you got to ask yourself, okay, but why though? Right? And then that's when you start asking, like, maybe this is a false construct. Maybe there is something that benefits from us being here. Maybe that's why we are programmed towards, one, thinking that this is all there is. You just get the one incarnation, so that when you get a chance, if you're confronted by these things and they say, okay, well, we'll send you back down there, it almost seems like it's a good thing, right? When you really don't, you've probably come back here over and over and over and over again. And like I said, if you have no memory of what you did in the past that got you sent back here, then clearly you're in a trap. And it's not really about you fixing anything. It's just a lie to get you to come back. And if you didn't remember your first incarnation or your second incarnation or your 100th reincarnation, then clearly that's just the whole purpose of the cycle. You're being cycled through repeatedly. And the Hindus say once you become conscious, then you can break the cycle and move on. That's great. But the other question you have to ask yourself is, okay, well, how do you define consciousness? Is it just being able to be more lucid and being able to take control of reality? Okay, great. And then how do you do that? Well, they have said that you do that by detaching from reality, just trying to detach from reality. And it wasn't just the Hindus that said that. That same idea has been proposed throughout, time. Gurdjieff said in his writings that the first step to realizing, or to getting out of this world is to recognize that you are in a prison. And the only way to escape a prison is by being taught by a person who had, learned to escape in the first place. And that, to me, I always thought was interesting, except for the fact that if he was, implying that he would be the person to teach you how to escape the prison, my question is, well, then how are you even here? Or why are you here? Why are you back here if you got out of the prison in the first place? Now, to attest to that, the Hindus, it's said, Hindus and the Buddhists have said, well, there are some people who, once they break the cycle, choose to come back here. But if attachment is what causes you to come back here, or one of the reasons why you end up coming back here is because you're attached to this reality, and detachment is what kind of gets you out of this reality, then you haven't really learned to be detached if you choose to come back to help people. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with coming back to help people, I just feel like that's just slavery with extra steps. Like, it's just you're just being trapped here. And instead of basically, the first trick, which is you did something wrong, now you got to come back here. Well, you become conscious and that shit doesn't work. So now whatever it is that keeps sending people down here just flips the game on you and just says, well, okay, fine, you can leave, but don't you want to go back and help people? And then you get sucked back here again, and now you're stuck in the same cycle, right? Like, it just seems like a motherfucking setup. Like, the whole thing seems like a motherfucking setup. I feel like this, like, legit, if you are in a prison, if this world is a prison, okay, and you know how to break out of here, to get us out of here, don't keep coming back, right? Like, don't be a part of the problem. Like, part of the problem is whatever it is that's keeping us here, these beings or whatever that keep tricking people into reincarnating. If they manage to trick you into reincarnating under the guise of, well, you can go back and free people, and you choose to participate in their scheme, then you're basically an active participant. Like, you really got to think about it. If these entities, let's say I'm right, okay, and I understand it sounds crazy, but that's perfectly okay with me. I've moved past that, but let's just say I am right, okay, and this world is some sort of like farm, like a consciousness farm that feeds off of our energy somehow, our creative energy somehow. And I'm going to play with that idea, through time over the next few, weeks and stuff to really think about what that means. But let's just say that that's right. Okay. You don't have to come back here to free people. Write a book, right? Like, if I was in a real jail, if I were in a real jail and I broke out, I'm not going to try to break back into the prison. I'm not going to try to commit a crime just to come back here. Like, I'll maybe, if I want to help somebody, write a map, like draw a map up and then, write something up on the wall, scratch something up on the wall and then hide the map somewhere and say, hey, you want to get out of here? These are the coordinates. This is how I got out. So basically what I'm trying to say is, like, all of us, even the gurus, like, I've read about how a lot of these Indian gurus, they become enlightened and but they still say, I'm going to come back here so I can, rescue people. And nobody ever checks them on it and says, nah, like, get the fuck out of here. Like, don't come back. You've already broken out. Leave something here. Leave something in the construct, and we will teach other people. Coming back is a trap. You just said this world is a trap, and then you're talking about, well, I'm going to come back and voluntarily, like, trap myself. But why though? Like, why? I don't know. I just really don't like taking things at face value. And I don't think that we should. I think that if there is life after death, which a lot of what I've read says that there is, okay, great. But I had a friend kind of say this to me. Sorry, I'm like painting while I'm recording this. There's a little bit of background noise. I just wanted to record this before it slipped my mind. But I had a friend tell me, I just feel like there's got to be more to life than paying bills and, paying bills till I die. And that mentality is not rare. Like, a lot of people feel like, okay, like, this seems very cyclical. Like, it's the same kind of loop over and over again, just in life. You get up, brush your teeth, have breakfast, go to work, come home, watch TV, eat dinner, go to sleep, repeat. And even more so since this whole coronavirus thing, right? So here you are, this brilliant, majestic entity that's, conscious, or at least aspiring to be, certainly able to manipulate reality in ways that all the other creatures in this construct cannot. And yet you are more or less doomed to repeating the same day over and over again until you die. And you call that a life. And yes, you could be like Sisyphus and just sort of find solace in that and the repetition. That's one approach, and that's perfectly okay. That's what I do. My days are pretty repetitive, like most of us are. But instead of fighting it, I just sort of embrace it. And maintain my predictability, because otherwise that's basically a way to make yourself insane. So if you are destined to do the same thing over and over again, why fight it? Just choose what you're going to do over and over again, and then train yourself to take solace in that, to find peace in that, until it's time for you to move on. And that's my approach. But that said, if all of these things that I've read are right, if all the stories you've heard of people, and their near-death experiences are true, if every account of reincarnation is factual, and by all accounts, they are, whether or not it's a mainstream belief or not, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if most people don't believe it. That doesn't matter. The truth is the truth, whether or not people believe it. It is what it is. So let's just say that all of those things that I stated are factual. And that when you die, some entity is going to fucking pop up and take the face of your loved one, take the face of your religious God, take the face of something, and then more or less try to trick your ass into coming back here. How are you going to prepare for that? I mean, we're talking about eternity. And by all accounts, it doesn't seem like these entities that do take on the form of loved ones in order to convince you to go back. I mean, it seems like their power stems from your consent, right? But because your whole life you've been programmed to, obey authority, do what you're told. And on top of that, to fear death, to fear annihilation, to fear any sort of existence outside of this reality. That's a programming, which to me, if you think about what do we know that programs, right? That runs off programs. So that's clearly an AI. So my thing is that this is a simulation. It's a computer program. And perhaps these entities that you encounter at the time of your death are just a sort of, AI construct that just takes the established beliefs of whatever parallel universe that you are existing in, and projects that to you at the time of your, at the end of your life cycle. And then it just tries to more or less convince you to go back. I've talked about this before. And I think I mentioned the show Fullmetal Alchemist in the episode that my cousin had shared with me, where the main character just kept cycling over and over again. And eventually, I guess he did something different. And he suddenly realized that this whole time he had another option. He just thought that it was just the one door that, basically was the door that made him reincarnate. And he thought it was just the one door. But then as he started kind of looping over and over again and became more conscious, he started to realize, like, oh wait, that there's another door. I have another choice. And the moment he realized I have another choice, then the other door became visible. And then he says in the episode, I never even saw the other door. You know? This is the nature of this podcast to the new listeners. So if a lot of the stuff we're talking about kind of makes you go, wait, what? Like, is she really talking about, you know, this world being a construct of AI? Or what we think of AI as be like AI might actually be some sort of, no, I'm sorry, not AI. Aliens might actually be some sort of like AI maintenance crew that basically keeps human souls recycled through this construct in a life loop over and over again. And I know you're thinking like, wait, what? But if I'm not going to talk about it, if I don't talk about it, very few people are even thinking about this. So if I don't at least put the idea out there, then it never gets discussed. And my thought is, if I'm right, on the chance that I am right, and everything else seems to be in support of what I'm saying, it's just very few people have actually come to this conclusion. But you have one physicist who, upon examining string theory, says that he has found computer code writ into the fabric of our cosmos. He chooses, even after seeing computer code, he chooses to not believe that we are in a simulation. But that's his choice. That's a human being, you know, choosing to ignore even the whole evidence that you've come up with, like choosing to ignore that because it makes you feel uncomfortable. I don't think that that's a scientific approach. But I understand that people reject the truth every day, especially even if it's like right in their face. It makes people uncomfortable, so they reject it. But to me, if you find code on something and it's computer code, and then like you see that, for example, there are these, I believe they're called like 20 constructs, or not construct, there are these 20 constants, like the speed of light and all of that just keeps kind of occurring in mathematical equations. And if they were just slightly different, that there wouldn't be life on Earth. And so much so that you have a physicist, another physicist, Max Tegmark, whose theory of everything is that our whole entire universe is mathematics. And yet he also doesn't believe that we are in a simulation, which once again, like if it acts like a duck and it sounds like a duck, Occam's razor states it's a fucking duck. Okay? So if you have a world that has code writ into its fabric, right? And you have these constants that if they were just slightly different or off by one point would mean that life in this reality would not have come into being. So you have all of these points that are basically pointing to we are in a construct, we are in a simulation. Then it's a fucking simulation. Whether or not your brain won't allow you to take that final leap doesn't negate your observations and your, mathematical equations that kind of support the obvious. Period. So let's start with that. Point 2. On a separate sense, you have the foundings of a doctor. I don't remember his name. The book is called Life After Life. Google it. Anyway, he's, interviewed a bunch of children and was able to prove conclusively that some children do remember their past lives. So that's another fact. All of these I guess, points kind of point to me, okay, if you're in a simulation, and it's a construct, and when people die, they claim to have a near-death experience, and they're all saying the same thing. They meet with entities who basically try to convince them to come back here. And these entities have the ability to take on any form, to change their shape, to change their form, like to become whatever avatar suits its purpose in order to make you come back to this reality, then put everything together and figure it out. That's the simplest solution. Something wants us to keep coming back to this reality. And it uses guilt, and it uses fear, and it uses manipulation, and it uses even programming while you're still alive in this world to program you to believe in certain things, to trust in certain images, right? So that when you do die and these entities show up, you go, oh, Jesus gave me a second chance. I'm going to come back. It's a trap. I know I've been stuck on this for a while. But I think I'm stuck on it for a reason. So clearly, whoever it is that's listening to this, that needs this, that needed to hear this, it needs to hear this, there you go. My assumption is that it's pretty much everybody, including myself. I think, like I said, for me, what caused me to just hit that record button was me like thinking, wait a minute, why are all these things like at the point of death trying to get you to come back here? And if all of reality is stored in your brain, then you've already lived it. So then what's the purpose of you reliving it? Unless it's some sort of trap. I could be wrong, obviously. It doesn't have to amount to being a trap. It could just be maybe a super cool futuristic game. And, you know, you just, when it shows up, you have the option to keep playing, I guess. But by all the accounts of all the near-death experiences that I read, it doesn't lead me to believe that people are given other options, except for maybe they're told, well, you can either go back or you can go to hell. Like, very few people are given the option to move past this reality into another one. Whatever that would be. Maybe another construct, who knows? But yeah, so think about that. I'll be thinking about that. And if more things kind of pop up into my mainframe, come and check out the podcast, because I'll record it and talk about it. All right, stay safe.